Welcome to the CCTA Wake-Up Call. We're glad you're able to join us, and we hope you enjoy the show. And I'm Bob Griswold and
Mary Griswold.
Kim Fink.
Glenn Fink.
We're going to have a conversation just about recent events in the news. And I think we'll start out with the report that we heard today. We're recording this on Thursday, that the Secret Service has ended its investigation into the cocaine in the White House. They have no idea how it got there, and their security cameras were not working, and there are different tales about how much there was, and they just have no idea.
well, it had to be a lot of cocaine because it was in the library, it was in the hallway, it was in the Situation Room. It was everywhere.
It was everywhere.
According to the reports, it was everywhere.
The initial report said it was in the library, and I don't know whether I believe that or not. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell.
And we know that the real answer, it was Colonel Mustard with the candlestick in the library.
Now, we're joking, but it's really not funny. If I can say this, please take this in context. Thank God it was cocaine, and it wasn't anthrax or something like that.
But
That was talked about this morning on the Glenn Beck show. They said, would we have the same response if this had been anthrax or something else? And then they talked about that it took 3 years of the Russian collusion stuff for the Secret Service to decide there was nothing there, and then in 10 days they figured out that there's nothing there. So the double standard is interesting as well.
And the double standard, as you said, Mary, I mean, we're sort of joking about it. Does the Secret Service expect us to take them seriously?
Gives me the warm and fuzzies to think that that's a secure building.
There's a meme. I'm going to plug rightwinggranny.com for a minute, but there's a meme that's today's Thursday, and it's at the top of the blog, and it's a man and a woman walking past the White House, and the man's looking at his news on his phone, and he says, they found cocaine in the White House, and the woman says, well, that explains their policies.
Well, I will say, and it was kind of Bob's point early on here, about how many locations it was thought to have maybe been in. There is nothing that stayed the same on this story. I think we earlier were talking maybe off radio on the actual volume, and now it's a gram, which is
yes, I know. And originally it was again a dealer's quantity, and now it's a gram, and not enough to get a fingerprint off of a package, and not enough to DNA. And
yeah, that's the amazing part with our science, that
yes.
There's no DNA, fingerprints, anything that would historically been found, unless, well, of course, somebody walking in there carrying this with gloves on, they wouldn't have probably caused,
Yeah.
So they were clearly wearing gloves, or there would have been fingerprints.
Well, but they know who came in to the building every day, every hour of every day. All they would have to do is drug test.
Mm-hmm. And even
if it
if
had been a Trump administration, you know darn well that would have already happened.
And also, you look at many major corporations now that require drug testing. Why would our White House not require drug testing?
Also, Hunter's, quote, probation requires drug testing for 2 years as part of his plea deal. So I want to know if Hunter has been subject to a drug test.
Well, one thing that I thought about is, they talked about when they were there and when they weren't, and said they weren't there on Friday, but they were there till late on Friday. And we saw video on television where they were up on the balcony. Mm-hmm. And hey, I don't know how a person that's high acts, but Hunter was wiping his hair back, rubbing his nose, looking a little
uncomfortable.
hectic. Yeah,
out of character.
Out of character. I mean, and he wasn't standing still. He was moving. I don't know. I'm thinking those could have characteristics of somebody that's not just having a diet soda.
All you would have to do is test everybody who was in that vicinity of the White House. You wouldn't even have to test the first family. You could leave them out, because if everybody else
Clean.
tested negative, that would kind of tell you what you needed to know.
And Marjorie Taylor Greene is pushing that that agenda, and I think it's great that it gets pushed. Obviously, I don't think it's going to happen.
And of course, we're understanding that the Secret Service is there to protect the president and do the confidences. However, I don't think the Secret Service is there to break the law.
Correct.
That's a very gray area, and I think we've seen situations with past presidents where there have been some very gray areas.
If their job is to protect the first family, I think that would include protect them from
Harm, not.
Yeah,
from even bad publicity. I mean, do you remember when the Bush girls were giving the finger to Secret Service people when they were in a car? That was national news.
mm-hmm. And the other thing, too, if you have the obvious suspect here is Hunter. We don't know that. We're not saying it's Hunter. We're saying he is the obvious suspect. But if you buy street drugs, you don't know what they're laced with. If your son is taking drugs, you want to get him off that stuff before he encounters fentanyl.
I would imagine he's got a well-vetted supplier.
Yes.
Well, I heard today that part of his compensation from China was a large diamond and a Porsche? So if he's getting things like that, I'm sure he's got somebody that has
That will
access-
keep him what he needs.
that has access to whatever it is he needs.
Yes. Okay. Anybody watch the hearings yesterday with Christopher Wray?
Yes, we did.
Yep.
They were interesting hearings and interesting dancing. Yes.
He was asked some very good questions, and I think when he was asked the question about the phone call that Hunter Biden made that said, my father's in the room, if you don't get the money, there will be consequences, and Christopher Wray kind of totally dodged that whole thing, and it was amazing. I don't know how you deal with blatant evidence like that and just dismiss it. And again, when the representative tried to push, Wray just danced better.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with meeting the narrative and the objective of the entirety. And if the collusion on the part of Wray and the FBI, if the intent was always to cast doubt, to advance the narrative, they're scripted. They're very well scripted. He chose to say many times, "I'm not going to speak to that. I didn't know that was a choice when you were under oath." He didn't say, "I plead the fifth." He said, "I'm not going to talk about that."
Nor did he use the Hillary excuse. I can't remember.
Correct.
Well, what was most telling? One, when he said that, this was interesting. When Gates presented that to him, and then he said, "Are you protecting Biden?" That was the only time in an interview that I watched, the parts that I watched, where he almost came unhinged a little bit. Mm-hmm. He was very composed most of the time, but he almost went hot on that, saying, "No, I'm not protecting." Right? He had an intensity. So I thought that was interesting. So it sounds like you might be close to the target when somebody throws their defense up like that. That's just saying. I guess the other thing was when he was. I'm trying to think of the other topic. We just talked about it a little bit earlier.
Well,
Go ahead and jump in.
I'm going to jump in for a second, but in the hearing itself, now, of course, the Republicans were accused of asking pertinent questions. Okay. The opposition party was not there to ask questions of Wray, but they were there to accuse Republicans of asking pertinent questions. Isn't that your job?
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting that Ray, being a Trump appointee, takes the position that he takes on protecting even the accusation or the impression of any of the accusations by the party. He seems to be defensive rather than protective of Trump and the Trump administration. He seems more willing to go the other direction and protect the Biden administration in any of the questions there. The big ones being when the Hunter Biden's computer came into play and the FISA requests and what they did to keep that information from coming out before the election. If Ray was really on board with Trump, he would have jumped all over that, and it would have come out prior to the election, not been held back and hidden.
It would have, yes, yeah.
And they knew long before the election, they had that laptop and they knew it was real. And they lied to the American public to influence an election. I mean, someone needs to be held accountable for that.
Agreed.
You know, again, we that was held on to for an awful long time, and then here, where they dug in their heels and closed the cocaine investigation in 10 days. My
So that
gosh,
was Kim's point earlier.
We're back on.
And how many millions of dollars did they spend on this investigation?
And the question becomes, is this a show being put on until the statute of limitations runs out?
Okay, folks, we're going to take a break and hear from our sponsors, and we thank you for staying with us. We'll be right back.
Torque Transmission and Automotive Repair is the transmission physician in the New Bern area. If you're experiencing transmission problems, call Charles Grover at 252-637-2399 or stop by the shop on 17 South in New Bern. Torque can install a new or reconditioned transmission, or they can rebuild your transmission if that's what you prefer. See Torque for a variety of minor automotive repairs like brakes, tune-ups, and water pump. You can count on Torque Transmission and Automotive Repair.
For news, commentary, and a different perspective, check out rightwinggranny.com. Hey, Granny's got it going on. See for yourself. Go to rightwinggranny.com.
The God and Country Christian Alliance has a simple mission, but it is a profound one. They want to inform and educate the public on issues of moral and political concern. They want to restore the Judeo-Christian values upon which this nation was founded to all levels of government. And they want to encourage and activate pro-family voters. Simple, but not easy. The God and Country Christian Alliance meets the third Monday of every month at Moore's Barbecue on MLK in New Bern. Meetings begin promptly at 7 p.m. and end by 8:30. To enjoy dinner with the group before the meeting, arrive between 6 and 6:30. Both the food and the company are good. Meetings include speakers and discussion, and their annual banquets are legendary. Join them on the third Monday of each month for a refreshingly candid view of the world and our place in it.
Just who are these people doing this CCTA program? They're people like you, a photographer, someone that ran their own business, someone retired from the military. Just people in the community that love this country and have a desire to do their part to lower taxes and shrink government, to protect individual liberty, and to preserve the U.S. Constitution and free enterprise system. We welcome you to come out to a meeting. If you like what you see and hear, there's a place where you can contribute to the cause. To learn more, go to cctaxpayers.com. That's cctaxpayers.com. The group meets every third Tuesday at Stanley Hall Ballroom in downtown New Bern to enjoy a fantastic speaker and report on CCTA activities since the last meeting. If you've been disappointed with rising taxes and government intrusion, don't just complain. Join Coastal Carolina Taxpayers Association and make your voice heard.
Welcome back. Mary?
One of the ideas that has come out about this investigation of all the corruption in the Biden family is that there is a theory that the investigations will continue until the statute of limitations runs out, and therefore no one can be charged with anything. That's a horrible thought, and I think maybe some of us need to look at the statute of limitations on some crimes and see if it needs to be changed. There will be, at the Tuesday night meeting of the CCTA, which incidentally will be Gary Timko talking about protecting the grid from an EMP, there will be a petition to sign saying that you support changing some crimes as having no statute of limitations.
Such as
Treason. And Glenn, you had a comment about the hearings.
Oh, yeah, and I lost it earlier, so thank you. When Ray was questioned directly about are you investigating the Bidens, he actually answered, I'm not able to speak about the investigation. When the asker came back to say, so you are investigating Biden, he said, oh, I can't really speak to that. So he'd already indicated he was from his initial answer, but then he waffled and tried to recant that answer. So I think it was pretty clear where they're at. Now, do I feel comfortable they're going to come up with anything? Not a chance.
No.
But I do believe, based on how he responded to that they're looking at stuff because they about have to, I guess.
You know, I think it's interesting that in side comments that the legislature is talking about this second headquarters that the FBI wants. Let's build it in Alabama. First off, let's defund some of what's going on here, and then let's build that second headquarters way far away.
Yeah, well, I understand they see it as a second headquarter now. Must be a pretty big
operation.
Facility
Bigger than
and
the
operation,
Mm-hmm.
and apparently a high percentage of the departments of the FBI do have top leaders down there. So, and apparently they got a lot of space. So I think there's a lot of reasons for doing it. The most is what you said, get them away from the swamp where they at least got to drive back to DC.
One of the other interesting comments was when one of the questioners asked him to respond to things that were in the report. Then he had a copy of the report and he showed it multiple times. And Ray said, I don't know. And the guy said, then read it. Read the report. Haven't you read the report? And you know darn well he read the report. And several times Jim Jordan read out loud from this report that Ray seemed to be unaware or uninformed or having a senior moment about.
You know, it's kind of sad that what has happened in recent years, we've lost faith in the Department of Justice, we've lost faith in the FBI, and now with this cocaine thing, we're losing faith in the Secret Service. And these were, I mean, we all remember Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., you know, this moral character with the high ground going after Al Capone and all this other stuff. And I know that there are people in the FBI that are people of integrity. I wonder what they're thinking now. I really do.
Well, the equal application of the law is definitely not in play here. If we look at the plea deal that Hunter got and basically the hand slaps, and if you hadn't paid your income taxes, do you think that you would get the same white glove treatment? And I mean, there are people who haven't paid their taxes, and yes, that's a crime, but what they haven't really addressed is where did that money come from that he hadn't paid the taxes on?
And where did the millions come from that he automatically paid the taxes with? I know this goes back a lot. This goes all the way back to J. Edgar Hoover. But in recent history, do you remember the New Black Panthers in the Philadelphia polling place?
Yes, with the baseball bats?
Yes, and there was a video of that. And the Obama Justice Department refused to prosecute.
Right.
I mean, it goes back that far. And when you don't deal with it at its inception, it just continues to grow.
Well, we have that here locally in the state of North Carolina with our attorney Josh Stein not defending the state of North Carolina in legal lawsuits.
Yes.
Which is his job. That's
Yeah.
what he's paid
And
for.
the court decided that the legislature could hire lawyers to do that, or they could defend.
Correct.
To
And
be the
one of the
defense.
things that he hasn't stood up for is the voter ID, the Marriage Act, the bathroom bill, the abortion. I mean, things that Christian conservatives would be in favor of. Our elected official is not doing his job, and he wants a promotion to governor.
And,
Yes.
and so even though the alternative is to hire counsel around him, what are we paying him for? So
Yeah.
it's taxpayer money being spent without cause, in my
Unnecessarily, because of a public servant, quote unquote,
Being
who isn't
self-serving.
being a public servant.
Yeah.
Can I jump back to Ray?
Go for it.
Okay, I got to. Since when are parents being involved in school boards considered terrorists?
And
I mean, that was the Attorney General that decided to write that memo. But why did Ray enforce that memo, fully knowing that it was not legal?
And why were they putting people in the Catholic Church to see what was going on there?
You silly girl, he didn't know anything about that memo, and that was just a one-time person, and that person has been handled. You silly girl.
And it's still being investigated, so I can't tell you all the facts about it. That's, hey, that was part of his answer in many cases. Well, it's still being internally reviewed, so I can't really speak to that.
And that one person being handled that's probably been promoted 3 or 4 times.
Twice. No, it's the amount of misuse of the Department of Justice to spy on Americans
Weaponized.
exercising their First Amendment rights, going to church, peacefully protesting. I mean, look at what's gone on with January 6th, which reminds me, they're now going to charge Ray Epps. And I'm convinced the only reason they're charging Ray Epps, do you know who Ray Epps is? He was the guy that was urging people on, and they knew who he was, and somehow he's not been arrested. And there has been so much public pressure. They're blaming Tucker Carlson for this. There has been so much public pressure that the DOJ is finally going to charge him. It will be very interesting to see what happens to him, whether he winds up in the Washington, D.C. gulag or not.
Wasn't it rumored that he was undercover?
Yes.
Secret Service or
Yes.
something?
They were probing that a good bit with Ray yesterday about, how many, I forget what the title was of these people. It was kind of covert people.
The plants, yeah, they are plants.
Under the control of FBI, and that's not the right term, but there was...
Undercover.
It was not just undercover, it was people that didn't work directly for the FBI in some cases, but were
Contract.
there to...
But the question,
To agitate.
For some reason that we have not been explained.
but there was a question. Can you tell us if there was a person or more than a person who was there undercover? And he wouldn't even acknowledge that there were any Secret Service people there.
Yeah,
So,
that was another
and I
one.
agreed with...
And then the video, I believe it was shown on Tucker Carlson. Of course, the news reports were that a police officer had been bludgeoned to death with a fire extinguisher. And then Tucker Carlson got out the video with a timestamp showing him walking around after the riots in perfect health.
Introducing people.
Yes, so everything we have been told by this Justice Department needs to be scrutinized, evaluated, and much of it thrown on the cutting room floor as false narratives.
One of the oddities here, I know that we're sort of joking about some of these things, but we're joking about the idiocy of the way that they're being treated or the way that they're being ignored. These are serious, serious things that puts our country in jeopardy. And folks out there, please do your own darn investigation. Find out what's going on here, because these are really, really serious events that affect our constitutional rights.
Yep, I couldn't agree more.
And
Bob.
our national security. I'm very, very concerned about the border and the openness of the southern border and the Chinese immigrants that are coming in now, because I can't help but think that these are sleeper cells that are getting placed strategically throughout the country. And I don't always align to a conspiracy theory, but I have a valid fear that we stand a big chance of an electromagnetic pulse, a power grid going down, and who's going to be here already set up to take over without a
Advantage of the
shot.
situation.
And I am very concerned with what's going on with the southern border and the openness of it, and the Chinese coming in. And then if you connect the dots back to the Biden administration, why?
You're right. Why? Yeah. You know, having retired from what they call supply chain management, way in the past, we used to have a lot of inventory hanging around nearby. And now with, quote, supply chain management, there's no excess inventory. If we have an interruption, an electronic interruption, we will have a real interruption in our supply chain. Folks, just go back and look at the gas thing couple of years ago.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Just in time.
Just in time.
Would be very detrimental. That just-in-time supply strategy will be detrimental.
It would not favor us. Yes, folks, we're going to take another quick break, and we want to hear from our sponsors. And again, please go to visit our sponsors and just tell them that you've heard about them on CCTA Wake Up Call, and we ask that you would just frequent them. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us.
At Professional Auto Service, keeping vehicles in top form and running well isn't just their business, it's the passion of folks who work there. If baling wire and duct tape is good enough, don't go near them. But if you take pride in your vehicle and reliability is important, go to 2215 Country Club Road in New Bern and let Professional Auto take care of your vehicle. You'll be pleased. That's Professional Auto Service, Country Club Road, New Bern.
Moore's Old Time Barbecue is slow cooked and smoked over hickory in the tradition of the Moore's family for over 70 years. Moore's also serves fried chicken, cooked to order seafood, and homemade side dishes. Open 7 days a week in New Bern, Winterville, Morehead City, Swansboro, and Jacksonville. Moore's will cater and deliver anywhere you want your truly traditional barbecue and fixings delivered. And remember, if it's not Moore's, it's less.
The County Compass is a rapidly growing, free weekly newspaper throughout eastern North Carolina. At the County Compass, we believe small business is the future of our great nation. Many small business owners have discovered that an ad in the County Compass each week is the most effective, the most affordable way to reach thousands of readers from all walks of life. At the County Compass, we focus entirely on local and regional news, coverage of important issues that directly affect your life. At the County Compass, we love our readers and we love our advertisers. This Thursday and every Thursday at more than 750 distribution points throughout eastern North Carolina, pick up your free copy of the County Compass newspaper.
Since 1952, the North Carolina Fisheries Association has been working to ensure access for fishermen and consumers to enjoy fresh local seafood. The North Carolina Fisheries Association is for fair, science-based fisheries management for commercial and recreational fishermen. If you agree with this philosophy, become a member. For more information, log on to ncfish.org. For fresh North Carolina seafood, there's no better place than B&J Seafood, Highway 70 East in New Bern. For news, commentary, and a different perspective, check out rightwinggranny.com. Hey, Granny's got it going on. See for yourself. Go to rightwinggranny.com.
Welcome back, folks, and thank you for staying with us, and thank you for hearing from our sponsors and supporters. Mary?
I just want to make a comment about the narrative and the garbage that the media, the mainstream media, is feeding us. Recently, President Trump held a rally in Pickens, South Carolina, which is a small town in South Carolina. And this is the headline from the Politico article about the rally. Trump takes over a small city in South Carolina, show of force. It sounds like he invaded them. I mean,
It was an insurgency.
I mean, he showed up and people waited for hours to get into the event. I think it was at the airport. I'm not even sure.
But you notice the media will never show the vastness of the crowds.
No.
They don't show how far back the crowds go.
Well,
And they also don't show the attitude of the crowds.
Yeah.
I mean, you get into a line with, a couple of thousand people, 3,000 or 4,000 people. Some people would normally get really, really mad if I can't get exactly what. These are people that are enjoying being together.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
saw that in 2017 during the Trump inauguration. What they did was they took a picture of the site of the inauguration 4 hours before people showed up, and said, see, no one is attending. So, I mean, it's at the point, I'm at the point, and I suspect a lot of other people are, if I'm not there myself, I don't believe what I'm hearing, because there has been so much garbage put out under the title of reality that it's just not believable anymore.
Yep, well said.
Okay, I want to talk about a man. He's a witness to Biden corruption, and his name is Gal Luft. And he's evidently a citizen of Israel, a dual U.S.-Israel citizen, and Congress would love to talk to him, but unfortunately, the Southern District of New York has put out an arrest warrant for him, charging him with weapons trafficking and being a foreign agent and all this other stuff.
Mary, can I break in and give you a quote? And this goes back to the Stalin-Lenin era. And Lavrenti Beria, his quote is, "Show me the man and I'll find you the crime."
Yes, I know.
That's called opposition research, Bob.
The chairman of the Oversight Committee was preparing to interview Luft when he disappeared. He still wants him to be a witness, but they aren't able to get to him because the Justice Department is blocking his being a witness. And evidently he met with he met with 6 FBI and Justice Department officials in Brussels and told them about the extent of the Biden connection with the China Energy Fund Committee. And this was probably in 2019. And he said that he was concerned because he felt that the person running for president was compromised, and he thought they might want to know that. It didn't go that way. Evidently, they decided that rather than to listen to what he had to say, they were going to charge him. And his comment was, "I, who volunteered to inform the U.S. government about a potential security breach and about compromising information about a man vying to be the next president, am now being hunted by the very same people who I informed and may have to live on the run for the rest of my life." And there is a video of him. You can go to YouTube if it's still up. If it's not still up at YouTube, it is embedded at Right Wing Granny, because I have learned to embed things in case YouTube takes them down. And White Ring Granny does have a search engine, so you can find that video. I've had some experiences with videos that I have linked to, and YouTube has taken them down.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. But this, my gut instinct goes along with Bob's quote that this is not a bad guy, this is a good guy. And the deep state very much wants to keep him from testifying.
Absolutely.
I agree with that, and I think that treason is a bad thing, and the whistleblower, quote, protections are not really protections. If you look into it, the whistleblowers are at great risk. There currently is a whistleblower that's been indicted. There is another whistleblower who has been without his job, without payment for his job for 8-9 months. This was on the news last night because of retaliatory actions by the employer. So the whistleblowers are fearful of what's going on. But if we look at Edward Snowden and the fact that he was jailed and the treason, everything that he did, yes, he didn't follow the chain of command correctly. Yes, that's not an argument. However, we wouldn't know any of this other crap was going on if he hadn't started it.
That's true, yeah. And what's his name, Assange?
Julian Assange.
Julian Assange. I mean, do they want him here so they can off him, or do
Yes.
they? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I mean, this is just being
And again,
politically incorrect.
I'm not commenting on whether or not he should have done what he did, but certainly these are people who made us very aware of the activities of the deep state and the extent to which our government has been lying to us.
And yesterday in the Ray hearings, they were asking about the social media and had the social media been contacted by the FBI and told to squelch certain things. And he basically said, no, that is not our job, but it's already been proven that they did do that and continue to do so.
And the Biden administration was very upset because when the court said, no, you can't have contact with social media because you're acting as a propaganda machine, they tried to restrict the court's ruling, and the court said, no, we stand by our ruling.
Well, and what is interesting is it's hard to keep your story straight with different questioning lines. and when he was asked about the payment to these social media companies, he said that's standard protocol. If you ask for information that they have, we pay them the cost for them to basically collect that information. So it's not a cost to the company. The federal government covers that. So he said that's part of our process, but at the same time he said we weren't doing that. We
were collecting information, but we weren't censoring information. Of course, the New York Post was kicked off Twitter for 2 weeks because they reported on the laptop.
Well, are they collecting it so that they can keep it from the public? We have to analyze it. We'll spend 6 years analyzing that laptop. So before we can do anything?
Now, they've had the laptop since what, 2019? That's 4 years.
4 years, yep.
There is supposedly child porn on that laptop. Isn't that illegal? Don't most people get arrested for that?
Depends on who you are.
By the way, jumping off to that topic with the child porn, a movie that has been very, very successful is called The Sound of Freedom. That's been out, and it's been outdoing the Disney movies, and based on the numbers of theaters that it's been in. And it's also created a whole bunch of turmoil when the FBI has modified their policy that says we don't have a policy of looking after child trafficking.
Was that the DOJ?
DOJ is, yes, we have modified our policy. We've taken that out of our policies. And I don't understand how they think they can get away with that.
Yeah, it was just yesterday or the day before I saw something on the news about that it had taken it off of its list of
priorities.
And it's only because this movie brought that to the forefront.
Interesting. So where is this movie playing in town?
It's over at the, what's it? The
Beartown Cinema.
Beartown Cinema on
Beartown?
Trent.
Have you seen it?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's phenomenal.
I've heard a lot about it,
Yeah.
and I've heard about it through kind of some of the Christian contacts I
And
have.
the audience clapped at the end.
And by the way, for anybody that's out there, if you go to angel.com, or is it angel.org? I'm not sure.
It's angel.com.
Angel.com, you can go and sign up for free tickets. If you can't go and pay to have some other people go. And that's what angel.com is doing, is if you have seen the movie and it has impressed you, go and pay to have 3 or 4 other people go to see that movie. It is well worth seeing.
That's awesome.
It was a movie that was made 5 years ago, and it's a very, very timely movie now, and it is in the face of Hollywood, and it is in the face of Disney right now.
And its history is also interesting because it was marketed to Disney, it was marketed to Netflix, and they were turned down
Yes.
by other
The
studios.
story was, yes, they turned that story
The
down.
thing that there were a couple of things that caught me in the movie, and I don't want to give away the whole plot, but the federal agent brought up the point. He said, I arrest the people involved in child pornography, but I never get to rescue the children. And then the other thing, one of the characters in the movie was a former cartel king, and he was helping rescue the children. And the guy says to him, how did you go from being the head of a cartel to doing what you're doing now? And he explained, and it's very brief. I was about to commit suicide, and God intervened.
Wow.
Wow.
Very, very, and he had, quote, billions of dollars to go and do this rescue missions.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Folks,
we need to see the movie.
Yeah, folks, we're gonna take another break to hear from our sponsors, and again, we'll be back in a few minutes.
Torque Transmission and Automotive Repair is the transmission physician in the New Bern area. If you're experiencing transmission problems, call Charles Grover at 252-637-2399 or stop by the shop on 17 South in New Bern. Torque can install a new or reconditioned transmission, or they can rebuild your transmission if that's what you prefer. See Torque for a variety of minor automotive repairs like brakes, tune-ups, and water pump. You can count on Torque Transmission and Automotive Repair.
Hey folks, here's a tip. When you think firearms and ammo, think East 70 Palm. They've been on Highway 70 east of New Bern across from the fairgrounds for 31 years. Drew Preston and his staff know firearms. Gun sales have tripled in under a year, and women shooters are the fastest growing part of their business. Their great inventory, over 300 guns in stock, changes daily. And if you want something they don't have, they'll look for it. New and used, rifles, shotguns, and pistols. Buy, sell, or trade. And they also have many holsters, scopes, and other gun accessories. Every member of the staff is deeply knowledgeable, and every one of them is an excellent shooter. So don't just come for the inventory. Come for the thoughtful advice. East 70 Palm, your home for firearms, ammo, and answers. Highway 70 East New Bern, across from the fairgrounds.
For news, commentary, and a different perspective, check out rightwinggranny.com. Hey, Granny's got it going on. See for yourself. Go to rightwinggranny.com.
Moore's Old Time Barbecue is slow cooked and smoked over hickory in the tradition of the Moore's family for over 70 years. Moore's also serves fried chicken, cooked to order seafood, and homemade side dishes. Open 7 days a week in New Bern, Winterville, Morehead City, Swansboro, and Jacksonville. Moore's will cater and deliver anywhere you want your truly traditional barbecue and fixings delivered. And remember, if it's not Moore's, it's less.
Welcome back. Thank you again for sticking with us, and I'm going to turn it over to Mary.
I want to talk about the U.S. House of Representatives Bill 4494. Now, This is a bill put forth by the House Administration Committee, and it's designed to put certain standards in place for elections that all states have to follow. And my first problem with this bill is that the Constitution says that states are in charge of making election laws, individual states, not the federal government. For instance, this law would require voter ID in all states. As much as I think that's a great idea, if the Republicans pass this and the Supreme Court says it's constitutional, what's to stop the Democrats from coming into power a year or two down the road and passing a law that says voter ID is unconstitutional and having that go through? I think this is a really bad idea. I mean, I like the idea of voter ID. I like the idea of the states being able to, one of the parts is that the states would be able to access the Social Security death list, so they would get dead voters off their voting rolls, which is kind of a problem. And there are just a lot of things in it that are actually good. The other thing, non-citizens are not allowed to make political contributions to a candidate, but they can make contributions to other groups, to nonprofit organizations. And for instance, there was a Swiss billionaire whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce, who has a foundation, and he has something called the Burger Action Fund, and they pumped $475 million into U.S. politics and discourse. I don't think that should be allowed. That's a different matter. That's not election law. That's interfering in America's elections. But the article that I'm basing this on is from the UK Daily Mail, and it does point out that after Georgia passed its so-called restrictive voting laws, where the National League or the Major League Baseball refused to have the All-Star game, and it was just a big mess because nobody was going to vote. It was restrictive. That after that law was enacted, 56.9% of registered voters voted, roughly the same percentage as 4 years before. Mm-hmm. So the law does not restrict voters. I think every state needs a voter ID law, but I don't think it needs to come from the federal government.
And the one time that North Carolina did use the voter ID, and it was in a primary, the registration process was not interrupted at all.
It was so much easier.
It was much easier to do it and to affirm the
It would
voting.
be faster for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody comes in and you just scan their ID, and it immediately pulls up on the computer who you're dealing with.
Not just that, but the scan, when you scan it, it also matches to the ballot that you've pulled. So it would keep somebody from possibly filling out the wrong ballot, especially in a
primary. Yeah.
In a primary,
Mm-hmm.
correct.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just generally, I'm a state sovereignty, state control, minimize the federal government. So anything that looks like it can head towards federal control, especially on elections, I am absolutely against. And we should work to not allow anything that opens that door. I'm not saying there can't be any federal laws as it relates to federal elections, but I would be no until I see that it has no path to them taking more control.
I think that they need to deal with the foreign money aspect. I think that needs to be dealt with.
Well, I think there's more than just the foreign money. You look at the machines, or the voting machines. Where are they made?
Yeah.
If you have your voting machines made in China, for instance, what's to keep them from inserting a microchip inside of that?
Mm-hmm.
Or a backdoor entryway computer-wise to manipulate the votes. We've had enough suspicion over the Dominion machines, and when you have the same company that's making the machines, that doing the software updates, that's also printing the ballots, is there a UR code that is triggering a response?
Yes.
I think we don't know what we don't know.
And of course, I think next week, there's going to be a lot more on that.
We're going to be talking about that with a computer geek.
You know, in private industry, you had to deal with something called Sarbanes-Oxley. And anytime you did anything with the computer, you had to have an audit trail of what you changed. And it was, quote, an auditable audit trail, except in voting. In voting, we don't need that audit trail in the way that those machines were set up. Yes, we will destroy the audit trail, and it really gets sort of crazy. And then from the perspective of federalizing election laws, Massachusetts, now I don't agree with this, but Massachusetts right now is trying to make illegals legal voters. Now,
In municipal elections.
Yeah. Now, how do you do that? How do you make an illegal legal?
And Constitution says you have to be, right? I believe I'm accurate, that it's a constitutional requirement.
Constitutional
That
requirement.
you have to be a citizen.
Yes.
You have to be a citizen.
At one point in the early days of America, you had to be a landowner to vote. The idea being that you had stake in the game. They changed that. And also I'm going to mention the fact that in the early days, of course, men voted and women didn't. And the idea was that the husband represented the wishes of his family. And it wasn't because women were second-class citizens. It was just because the husband was regarded as the head of the house.
That's a biblical principle that people don't understand.
And there were very few single-parent houses that were headed by women. So it was a different culture. And when you look at history, you have to understand the cultural differences that you're dealing with.
Now, we were up in Massachusetts for 35 years, and we attended a lot of town meetings. And the town meeting is, again, you're in the town meeting, and if you are a registered voter in the town, then you get a chance to vote and argue in the town meeting. And there might be times when I can remember where we argued for 4 to 6 hours over buying a street sweeper, for modifying a street sweeper that was given to us by the military, given to the town by military. We needed to upgrade it a little bit for lighting and stuff like that, and argued for like 6 hours for this few $100s. And then the next item up was, and I'm going way back, it was $20,000 for another brand new one, and that passed within about 10 minutes. So it's the idiocy of the voting. However, you needed to be a voting resident in that town
Yes.
in order to participate in your financial future.
And that was a case where you saw pure democracy rather than representative democracy. And it often went into chaos because you would have people come with a special interest, like they wanted a road approved. When the development was initially
Substandard or whatever else, yeah.
was initially put in, the developer said, "Oh, we'll take care of that road privately. We'll never make it a town road." And then 5 years later, "We want it to be a town road, so you have to snowplow it." And so you would have special interests come in, and again, it was pure democracy, and you got to see what pure democracy was like.
Where they would pack
and
the
you saw
audience.
the wisdom of our founding fathers, who gave us a representative republic rather than a pure democracy.
Right.
Well, it's emotion. A lot of times we are guided to our decisions based on how it feels versus the logical.
Yes.
The logical attempts. If you are ruled by fear versus common sense, you don't always make the wisest decision.
And you are more easily controlled if you are ruled by fear, as we saw during the COVID pandemic.
Much easier controlled. And yes, so keep going. We got time. Keep going. No, you can't shake your head. We got time.
I want to talk about Tuesday night. And I'm going to take some time and talk about Tuesday night.
Folks, she's breaking in early to talk about Tuesday night. Let's go. Go for it.
On July 18th at 7 o'clock p.m. in the Stanley Hall Ballroom in downtown New Bern, we are going to host Gary Timko. Gary has a degree in business administration. He owned and operated his own financial business for 32 years, and he got involved in politics in Michigan. When he retired, he moved to New Bern and began getting involved with various projects. And his focus at the present has been on our energy sector and the protection of our electric grid system from attacks, primarily EMP. Electrical magnetic pulse, which could completely immobilize life in America. Now, our first experience as a country with EMP was quite by accident. We were doing nuclear testing in the islands of Bimini, and they discovered that the stoplights in Hawaii went crazy, and they couldn't figure out why. And they discovered that the electrical magnetic pulse had impacted the stoplights hundreds of miles away. And they began to do research, and they found out that actually our electrical grid could be wiped out by a low-level nuclear explosion in the middle of the country. It can also be negatively impacted by a strong solar flare. So it would be to our advantage to protect it. Now, during the Trump administration, they did pass legislation to protect it, but I don't know if that was ever followed through on. I don't think it was.
There's also something called hardening the supply chain of electricity, and that hardening is just allowing it to be protected from these pulses. And I think the country has not done that, even though it's a relatively cheap thing. Folks, I just want to say thank you for staying with us. Thank you for all the time that you've invested in us, and we ask you to go and to visit our sponsors, and again, tell them thank you for supporting us, and we ask you to come on out to the meeting. And that's Tuesday night, July 18th, at Stanley Hall, 7 o'clock. Thank you.
People who learn to do something well and do it often get very good at it. Dr. Jay Singleton and his staff spend a lot of time removing cataracts, and they are good at it. Dr. Singleton has been doing a high volume of these procedures for 15 years. Let's face it, once we turn 50, the chances are we'll soon need cataract surgery. Fortunately, the Singleton Vision Center is conveniently located at 3515 Trent Road in New Bern, and the state-of-the-art Singleton Surgery Center is bringing costs down for patients and participating insurance companies. For dedication, experience, and convenience, you can trust the Singleton team. Dr. Jay Singleton and the Singleton Vision Center is conveniently located at 3515 Trent Road in New Bern.
Since 1952, the North Carolina Fisheries Association has been working to ensure access for fishermen and consumers to enjoy fresh local seafood. The North Carolina Fisheries Association is for fair, science-based fisheries management for commercial and recreational fishermen. If you agree with this philosophy, become a member. For more information, log on to ncfish.org. For fresh North Carolina seafood, there's no better place than B&J Seafood, Highway 70 East in New Bern. For news, commentary, and a different perspective, check out rightwinggranny.com. Hey, Granny's got it going on. See for yourself. Go to rightwinggranny.com.
At Professional Auto Service, keeping vehicles in top form and running well isn't just their business. It's the passion of folks who work there. If baling wire and duct tape is good enough, don't go near them. But if you take pride in your vehicle and reliability is important, Go to 2215 Country Club Road in New Bern and let Professional Auto take care of your vehicle. You'll be pleased. That's Professional Auto Service, Country Club Road, New Bern.